Hey everybody, welcome to the live stream show. This is So You Are About to Graduate College. I'm Patrick Kling.
I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Kelly Bailey.
How you guys doing today?
Not too bad, not too bad.
So while we wait for folks to hop on the live stream, for all the people, dozens and dozens of people are watching right now, folks, go ahead and introduce yourself wherever you are in the world. Maybe your name, if it's not visible, and what you're studying, if you're a student, or what you are in the industry. We'd love to hear who's watching right now. So go ahead and do that. What do you think about that, guys? We gotta see what they're doing.
Sounds good.
Oh yeah, that's exciting.
Thank you all for joining us today.
Garrett!
Yeah, there's a lot of people. So what I wanted to do is let everybody know that this is gonna be a fantastic show. We have put a lot of work into this, although Animax has put a lot of work into this. So we've just kind of been riding their coattails. We're really excited to be here with you guys today. And we're going to go ahead and bring them on now. So what we're going to do, folks, just so you know, we're going to be doing a little bit of a behind the scenes look at Animax. And then we're going to go ahead and go into our traditional Q&A session, all about advice for those that are students or those that are trying to get in the industry. It's going to be really exciting stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to Dave for now and bye to Kelly for now, as I go ahead and pull up the real stars of the show, for at least today's show. We got Jeff Fawcett, international board member for TEA and founder, CEO, president of Animax Designs. And we have Steve Andersen, VP of operations at Animax Designs. There you go. Well, welcome to the show. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great, Patrick. Thank you so much for including us today. Looking forward to the chat. Yeah,
this is exciting. I've seen a lot of good buzz on LinkedIn and other places, so it's exciting to be here.
So we're gonna go ahead and just dive right into it. We want to know all about your company. So why don't we go ahead and throw it to you guys? Maybe give us a little tour of your company.
Great. Well, our company is Animax Designs. We were founded in 1989, so we just celebrated our 30-year anniversary as a company.
Congratulations.
And what we do is we create innovative three-dimensional characters that include animatronic figures, interactive characters, animated costumes or talking head costumes, and puppets. And some of our recent larger clients that we do regular business with include companies such as the Walt Disney Company, Universal Studios, DreamWorks, Nickelodeon, of course, your company, Patrick, Sesame Workshop, SeaWorld, Feld Entertainment, and Warner Brothers, and dozens of others that we are very lucky to be partnering with on a regular basis. So let's just go right into the meat and potatoes of the company. So who's joining you today is myself. I'm the president, CEO, and founder of Animax Designs. I started the company actually as a senior in college 30 years and about 6 months ago. We'll talk more about that in a little bit here. And we also have Steve Andersen joining, who is our VP of operations, which is another way of saying the guy that actually runs the company. A guy like Steve, I'm lucky to have him because he makes my job very easy. So moving further forward into the deck, we'll give you kind of a quick overview of the company. So this is our facility. We're based in Nashville, Tennessee. We have roughly around 150 employees that range everything from kind of the traditional administrative, executive, HR side to our design team, which includes creative designers, illustrators, concept designers, digital artists that work in Maya, ZBrush, sculpting software, as well as our the balance of our design team working in mechanical design software, both on the kind of ideation side as well as the engineering side, and as well as our controls engineering as well. All that is contained in-house on a team of about 45 very creative designers. And then in addition to that, we've got a production facility that we refer to it very often as a vertically integrated facility, meaning we have everything under one roof. And we're very fortunate enough to have a very big roof to put all that under, which you saw earlier on the photograph. we are at a very awesome place in our company career because we get to work with everyone around the world. Our business is truly global, and we really enjoy the heck out of what we're doing. Let's get into some of the meat and potatoes of what we do. You know, sometimes when people who know us hear that we do puppetry, they say, well, puppetry, is that, you know, like stuff that you do on the weekends, like at a show at a library or a school? No, puppetry is a very old art form that nowadays we apply puppetry to taking intellectual property from, you know, Disney films, DreamWorks films, and we turn them into living, breathing characters that are used traditionally in theme parks and visitor attractions. So, you know, what you see on the screen here are examples of puppet versions of Sebastian the Crab and Scar and Oscar the Grouch and others that are basically driven by live operators, which gives it a real, you know, we talk about agency in our business and sort of an individualized visitor experience. Puppetry is the best way to create that. And it's something that we feel is a very important art form. We have one little video here of the little Shrek donkey that we wanted to share with you, just to give you a sense of what a live puppet actually looks and feels like.
This is gonna be fun. We can stay up late, swapping manly stories, and in the morning, I'm making waffles. Oh yeah? Well, two can play at that game, Shrek. One silent treatment coming right up. See that, Shrek? Not talking to you at all.
Of course, in this video, you can see the puppeteer in full view, but there would be a screen between the puppeteer and the puppet where you would not see that, obviously. This is the new Shrek donkey that many of you may have seen at the Universal Studios Park in Hollywood. And we have other versions of the same puppet that are used in the other Universal parks as well. So again, puppetry is a very important part of our roots and our craft here at Animax. Moving further into the slide deck, you know, another great version of a very large puppet is PETA, which is a brand new puppet that we've just built for a new parade at Disneyland that unfortunately opened and just as quickly closed due to COVID-19. So this puppet is being very well fed and cared for in its storage facility at Disneyland, and is looking forward to coming back as soon as the clouds clear for COVID-19. But you know, some of you may have seen this already on YouTube, or maybe actually in the park for the few weeks that it was open. This is a very stylized, kind of abstract style of puppetry that requires 5 actual live performers to animate it. So it walks down the parade route, and you have 2 puppeteers that actually articulate the wings, another puppeteer that drives the head, you know, from a steering wheel, articulates the mouth and the eye blinks, etc. So we're really proud of this style of puppetry, and we've been very fortunate to have Disney as a partner for many years to give us the opportunity to you know, express ourselves with this style of puppetry.
That's great.
One comment I'll make here: what you're seeing here on the screen weighs about 150 pounds, which, if any of you know relative weights of things, or if any of you have been performers, that's a very ambitious weight to try to achieve, and one that we're as proud of our ability to hit very light aerospace level weights as much as we are of really capturing the IP of a character like this.
So I have a question for you in regards to that one. So when you have this assignment, I'm not sure how much you can expose, but like, what details or requirements are you getting from your partner, your client? Are you getting a concept sketch and weight requirements? Like, how collaborative is it working with their entertainment team? Do you test and adjust it? Can you talk about that process a little bit?
Yeah, I think all the above. Steve, you want to comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think, as Chuck said, it is a very interactive process. Obviously, it depends on the client and the project that we're doing. Sometimes we get very well spelled out requirements for something like ride animatronics or things like that. With this, it's a very interactive process where you've got the film and you've got the character from the film, and then we've got some maybe stylized concept sketches and some other references of things that have been done maybe elsewhere. And then we sit down and work through concepts and get very interactive with our client's team on this. So this is a great example of that interactive process where sort of the creative collaboration went all the way through to the very end of the project.
That's
And
great.
having a partner like Disney, the creative entertainment team, they're very open-minded, very understanding of, hey, if we've set this weight out there, we know it's nearly impossible to achieve that. So let's work together.
Yeah.
And we're certainly open to making compromises. How can we make the figure finish look just like it walked off the film, but balancing that out with durability factors as well, because you can build lightweight things, but you don't want it to fall apart, a month later after it started to be used in the parade. So they're really good partners in working with us hand in hand on dialing in the final design for a character like this.
Yeah, I'll also add real quick that, in a process like this where, the guidelines can be a little bit fuzzy, you don't know what you want until you see it. We often go down a path of we'll explore several options and then review those with the client and then kind of home in and make decisions with the client on this. So this is, again, a great example of that type of process.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right.
Well, let's continue a little further into the deck, and we'll show you some other examples of things that we've done. Again, Animax is all about IP and partnering with well-known companies who have their beloved characters that exist in in film or television or another medium. And now it's time to bring that character to life in some other way, be it a theme park or a retail location for promotional use, etc. So what you see on the screen here are examples of costume characters. We call them performance characters that we've created for a variety of applications. You can see Nintendo characters that are used at the retail locations in New York City and Seattle, as well as Bugs and Daffy here we've done for Warner Brothers. Big Bird, obviously, everyone recognizes. King Louie down in the lower right-hand corner is a great character that we've done for Disney. And then, of course, the new version of the Ninja Turtles that we did for Nickelodeon and Patrick's company. So good examples of characters that literally are coming to life, walking right out of those different projects. I'll show you a clip from the next slide here that's quite interesting. This is a recent project that we did for the Warner Brothers World in Abu Dhabi Park, and this show is called Meet Bugs and Daffy. And for this show, this is the very first time that we've taken the Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck characters and done fully articulated performance costume characters of them. And there's a little clip here that we're going to play that will show you an example of that show.
Listen, I've got the look and the talent. I'm the one that should be in charge here. Daffy. I bust my piece every day to make you people laugh. And from what? Is the brilliance of my stardom only to blind you all?
So what you're seeing here is actually live performers that are wearing the costumes, and all of the movements of the face and the eyes are being streamed wirelessly from off stage through various technologies, as well as the audio. So all of that is basically an automated performance that really just brings a character like that fully to life in a show environment like that. We're really proud of our work in that in that whole realm.
Yeah, it's very. One day we gotta do SpongeBob, okay? I promise you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then the majority of our work nowadays really gets into larger scale and more engineered animatronics type projects. This is a sample project of a character that's on the higher end of the realism scale. This particular character has 16 points of movement in it. All the movements that you're seeing on the screen here are operated by servo motors that really give him a really wide range of expression and characteristics.
Nice. That's really fantastic.
But what's interesting about Animax is our history. The company started first and foremost with a love of puppetry, and it's really given us a unique advantage when it comes to moving into the realm of animatronic figures, because good animatronics is all about telling a story and doing that with whatever tools you can that really help bring that character truly to life. So we really pride ourselves with our animatronics work of doing it very differently, very organically. And we've had a lot of really great successes in recent years. An example on the screen is a variety of different animatronic figures we've done for Harry Potter, for the different Universal Studios theme parks. Many of you are probably familiar with what you see there. One of our more recent accomplishments is the signature characters of Hagrid, and now the new Scroot creature from Hagrid's motorbike adventure, which we've got a little clip today to show you, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, what it looks like in the context of that ride. That was a really amazing opportunity that we had to partner with Universal on a project like that, because when you have a ride that actually is named Hagrid's Motorcycle Ride, obviously the level of importance of a character like Hagrid is of the utmost. So we definitely take that to heart when we're chosen as the company to bring a character like that to life. So there was a significant amount of time that was taken, in our work with Universal to really capture that character, both sculpturally, the clothing itself, every single stitch and detail was dialed in exactly to the costume that was used in the film. Not to mention the engineering that went into the character, which Steve can probably comment a little bit more on the inner workings and the challenges we had there.
Sorry, guys, I was keeping my mic muted for background noise. Yeah, it's when you look at the complex animatronics like that, basically what we're doing is we're engineering and building really, really extraordinarily complex and unique robots, essentially, that are very highly controlled, amazingly engineered to have a 20-year lifespan, and then we're covering them with all the organic things that Animax was founded on to make them look awesome. And it's a very complex and interactive process. These two characters were different because, obviously everybody knows Hagrid very well, and everybody has very strong expectations of what Hagrid should look like. But then we also had the Scroot character, which essentially only exists in everybody's minds from reading the books, right? So it was very different in working on those two characters. But the thing that makes Animax really unique is that combination of really heavy duty engineering and controls, coupled with the artistry that goes into what the character looks like on the outside, and then also fundamentally how it moves.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, and it's hard to, it's challenging in a presentation like this today to really lift the curtain back and show you the behind the scenes. But you can imagine how incredibly complex, a project like this we spent 2 years on. And, more than half of that time was spent in the design effort, creating animatics to show kind of the proposed movements of the characters, and then dialing in, working backwards to the inside, dialing in the mechanical design, and then the engineering work comes in, and then you have the struggle between the two worlds and all the little millions of little compromises that you're faced with making along the way, to where on the other side it spits out this amazing character that you really just see the exterior on. I think I can see on the chat today, we've got folks like Braden and Griffin that are great guys that have interned with us in the past, that actually know, firsthand, they've been here, they've seen our processes firsthand, and could certainly, explain more about that one-on-one with you guys when you have some time to chat offline. But it's a really, really amazing, complex, awesome process that we take a lot of pride in here at Animax.
So I have a question for you. So, we were trying to, for those that may not know, we have a lot of students watching. Some people may or may not know that, like, when Universal does an attraction, they think it's all Universal. However, we obviously know that you guys are doing work for them, and there's countless vendors that are doing the same thing. So maybe this is a pretty good example because it's very famous. It's an amazing attraction. Everyone loves this attraction, right? So what the process is of getting it in your shop, the kind of types of things that you get from them, then taking it actually to the field and programming it in the field. Could you expand a little more on that process as much as you feel comfortable with?
Well, the process really starts with communication and collaboration. We start with obviously a context for what the project is all about. Nowadays, everything is modeled in Revit or another like a SketchUp style program. So we have the advantage of having a 3D environment that we're all able to point at and use as a tool to communicate what the needs are. So in this case, the setting for characters like this would have been modeled out three-dimensionally, which right away gives us a good head start. From there, Patrick, it's a matter of going through multiple design reviews where we have certain stop points or gates, as we call them. In the world of Universal, they traditionally break up their design effort into a concept design phase, then followed by a preliminary design phase, and then a detailed design phase. And at each one of those points, they have certain input as well as the IP holder. In this case, it's Warner Brothers and J.K. Rowling and her team. That's why it takes so long, because there are a lot of voices involved, and our goal is really to find consensus and really talk about, well, I need this character to do this. Well, that it can't do that because that's too fast or too heavy, or servo motors can't do that. Well, I don't care. I still want you to do that. So therein becomes the real collaboration, and the conversation evolves from that. It's hard to get into many more details outside of talking in vagaries like that, Patrick, without violating our agreements that we have in place. But it really comes down to working very tightly together. And I think that the advantage that we have is that many of the people we worked with on this project, we have past history with on other projects we've done for Universal.
Yeah.
In the industry that we're in, where there's movement that happens. We may have somebody on the team from Universal that we worked with for a decade at Disney prior to them joining Universal, and vice versa. And that's a very typical thing in our industry, to see that type of thing happening. Steve, what do you think?
Well, that's I think you covered a lot of it. It's once again, I'll go back to the combination of the technical side and then the creative and artistic side. When you look at the interaction with clients like this, obviously for something like a theme park attraction and animatronic figures, there's a lot of very strong technical requirements that come in for safety, functionality, longevity, maintainability, and those things. And those are, we work very closely with very strong technical teams at our clients to work through those details. But then in parallel, you have the creative side where we're looking at the artistic side of the motion and the animatics, the finishes, the clothing, the colors, the lighting, and all those details. And both internally and externally with those teams, then everybody has to kind of mesh and collaborate together, right? Because it's all, it all comes down to compromises and collaboration to make it all work within the bounds of schedules and budgets, and even in some cases, the laws of physics and available technologies. So it's, as Chuck said, it's a very collaborative process. And it's hugely complex, especially when you've got tight time frames.
So a next example of one of our more recent projects is this installation that's actually at the Empire State Building in New York City. They, over the last couple of years, decided to create a new visitor experience before you go up the elevator to the observation deck, including this iconic version of King Kong that you can see here. And so this was a really cool example of mixing mediums, of having a physical sculptural pair of hands of King Kong that looks like they've busted through the side of the building, with media of Kong in the background, making you feel like he's right outside and he's gonna grab you and climb up to the top of the building. This actually has, these hands actually have mechanical elements inside them that when you get close, they vibrate and move a little bit to make you feel like he's really alive. So that's another example of a visitor experience where we've been able to apply our crafts to it. Here's an example of some raptors that we've done for based on the Jurassic World franchise. In this case, this is part of the Jurassic World exhibition that we do in partnership with our parent company, City Neon. These dinos,
Sorry about that.
these dinos actually are, this is, Raptor Blue, and you've got Echo Charlie and Bravo as well. And what you see in the picture here is both the scenic, elements of the back end of the crate with the dino itself that's in the muzzle. So Patrick, you can go ahead and play that video there.
All right.
And if you look up close here, you can see we've got servo animations that are there to help blink the eyes and make him snarl. And you can see the nostril is opening and closing there, as well as the entire cage, having a shake motion. And all of this is set up to be interactive, where when a guest enters the room there are actual sensors that sense their presence. And as you walk up close, these characters will start to come to life and really interact with the guests. We've got this installation currently in Chengdu, China, which again, due to coronavirus, it opened in the first week of January, and then it's now closed at the end of January. It's scheduled to reopen later this summer, fortunately. And we have a similar installation in Seoul, Korea right now. To answer that question, yes, this is considered a semi-permanent exhibition or traveling exhibition, where this may sit in a city like this for 6 months to a year and then get up and move into a new city. Some of you may have seen earlier versions of this that have been touring around the US. This is a great project. We really enjoy this. We're currently in the midst of building another, I think it's 15 dinosaurs, Steve.
Wow.
For the next version of this. Really enormous, highly dynamic dinos that are of a quality what you see here in the picture.
Yeah, I want to make a little point on this. I think we forget about it very quickly, Chuck, is the fact that from start of this project until we installed them in China was about 4 months on that particular project. So unlike some of the others where, even those timeframes seem very short when they're 18 months to 24 months, this was actually about a 4-month project. So it was a huge focus and a huge effort here in the shop at the end of last year. Amazing effort from the team at Animax and our partners, Victory Hill, and on the scenic side to pull this off.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question for you. So this looks pretty terrifying. Are you ever told to, you've gotten a little, I don't want to say too realistic, but this is terrifying stuff. Do you ever get the developers or your clients are we need to dial back how realistic it is? Do you think we're at that point?
It depends on the client or the IP holder. I think in this case, the Jurassic World franchise, that's a combination of Amblin Entertainment and the NBC Universal Brands team. They love these dinos to be considered terrifying. So we really love working with them, because it's rare that you have an opportunity to really dial in the sheer terror and a scare moment like this for guests, whereas most of what we do is a bit more family friendly, where it has to appeal to little kids all the way up to parents, grandparents, etc. This stuff really gets us excited.
So we have a cool question.
I'll also say with this stuff, right, it's, our focus is always to bring the top level of realism and function and reality and speed and dynamics, response and everything to the table. After you build it, you can always turn it down, but once you've built it, you can't turn it up, right? So, we try and knock it out of the park. It's kind of our MO and the way we do things. And then if the client needs to slow things down or back things off a little bit, we can do so. I mean, I'd say the Scroot character was kind of like that, where, we built it to these animatics that you're looking at on Maya and on a computer screen, and you're like, oh boy, that looks pretty cool. And then you're standing there watching it when you actually get it up to 100% speed, and your reaction is like, holy crap, we're spinning a Volkswagen around, suborbital speed here. And the reality as an engineer strikes you of things could get bad really, really quickly. I hope we did our job well. So.
I'd love to answer this question since it's right here, right now. This is a great question. What sort of challenges are present in designing a traveling exhibition versus a more permanent install?
Yeah, I'll try and take that one. You know, the challenges are really immense, frankly. You know, I'll go to the extreme, right? The traveling exhibition like this, which is semi-permanent, has its own significant challenges relative to a permanent install, because you have to break stuff down so that it can be packed up and shipped, and you have to design it so that it can be put back together with some reasonable level of effort without a lot of custom tools and things like that. The extreme case of that, which Chuck will be showing you in a minute, is the Jurassic World Live T-Rex that we did for Feld Entertainment. And that takes it to a whole different level, because we have this, you know, super giant robotic dinosaur that moves every single week, right? Yeah. So that T-Rex that you see there, and you can see the scale relative to the people standing there, that has to pack down and go in a shipping container and move to another city and get put back together. And I will say, like, for the T-Rex, the design effort that went into making it safely transportable, making it so that it could be set up in about 2 hours, is where the crew has gotten from the time they offloaded the container until the T-Rex is ready to go, is about 2 hours.
Wow.
And then looking at the loads on the structure while you're shipping it, they're actually some of the biggest challenges in building a character like this, and they're way outside of the norm for what you think of as far as building an animatronic character or a robot. Mm-hmm. So it's a huge challenge, and it's a very significant portion of the effort on these traveling items.
Yeah, it's very impressive. I was just thinking about trying to get how many parts that T-Rex is in. Would you be willing to share how many, or estimate how many parts it breaks down into? Like,
well, I mean, it's very interesting, because the way we have it designed is you see the carriage under the T-Rex, that's the drive system and has all the controls and everything in it. That carriage, we have 2 elements that mount to it that basically lift it up off the ground on pneumatic tires. We take the entire T-Rex and we pull each of the legs off, and they go in shipping fixtures. And then essentially the rest of the T-Rex drops down on its center post, and we remove the top of the post, and it goes from what, you know, we functionally or affectionately call it a big chicken on a stick when it's in its form that you see it now. And then when it collapses down for shipping, we call it a tadpole, because basically it looks like a giant tadpole resting on that chassis. And essentially we just take the legs off and drop it down, and then that whole thing rolls right into the shipping container.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this entire dinosaur weighs 8,000 pounds, which I believe that the upper portion of the dino is about, what, Steve, 2,500 of the 8,000?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Whereas the base itself has most of the weight in it, and a lot of that weight budget is designed for stability reasons. This is quite an elaborate animatronic, every bit as complex as what you would see in a ride or attraction at a theme park. In this case, this one contains 27 different very large electric servo actuators that have full sensoring compliance built into them, all the things that we really need to really create a level of motion and realism that really meets the requirements of an Amblin or a Steven Spielberg as the end approver. So really, really amazing challenge, you know, because essentially what we have to do is the impossible, and we love that. It's I wouldn't say that a project like that went without its headaches.
Yeah,
there were lots of them along the way, but that's the world we live in. We say yes to impossible things. We try to be responsible and allow enough time to solve the problems, and enough, you know, money in the budget where we don't go broke on every project. And you know, we learn every time. And this one was just an amazing challenge. The idea of building a 45-foot long, fully animated T-Rex. Who gets to do that, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and you mentioned, you know, so this was the first time, like you said, all or most of these dinosaurs in the show are robotic. They're not puppeted, and at least, you know, traditional puppeted. You know, so can you
yeah, correct.
about that a little bit?
The T-Rex itself, this was based on a concept that had existed from Walking with Dinosaurs that was launched many years ago. But in that case, you had a driver that was essentially located in the base of the dinosaur. So you had a human being that could drive the thing around. In this case, this is a fully autonomous 8,000-pound radio controlled toy that moves around the arena floor, and if it makes the wrong move, it can kill someone. So the engineering and the safety considerations that go into something like this are as high as it gets in terms of our scale and our level. Really amazing challenge, and one that we're very grateful to Feld and to Universal for giving us the opportunity to pull this off.
That's fantastic. So, what we're talking about safety, how do you ensure establish follow safety standards when components and structures vary between projects?
Yeah, that's it's a big challenge, and it really depends on the client and the application. So, the theme park operators, the big companies like Disney and Universal, they have very distinct and specific internal requirements that we have to follow as part of the design process throughout the CD, PD, and DD phases, where we do lots of hazard analysis, failure mode and effects analysis, and things like that. We have to meet certain requirements for life prediction and finite element analysis that gets agreed to, and all the safety considerations that go into the control system on how we respond to every potential hazard that's out there. So those projects are very structured. In other projects, and what we're finding more is we have companies like Victory Hill and City Neon, or companies like Feld Entertainment, where they typically don't do big complex animatronic stuff, and now they're getting into those areas with different types of traveling shows and location-based entertainment. They don't have those same sets of standards to work to. So we are we work very closely with them to kind of create our own standards that are not specific to a theme park, but react and respond. I mean, obviously having this T-Rex out on the floor in an arena with live performers is very different from the level of kind of situational control you get in the theme park with visitors or customers at the theme park versus the maintenance crew. So there's a lot of common sense things that go into it. There's a lot of I guess I'll call it engineering judgment, and there's application of certain standards that we use that fit into it. But in each of these cases where we're doing something that hasn't been done before, quite often you have to create that roadmap yourself, and you have to get a lot of smart people together and collaboratively think through what are those hazards and figure out how to mitigate them.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a cool clip. Wanted to play it again. I figured you were going to talk a little longer.
No, sorry.
Great.
All this does factor into the control approach we take, right? Because on the mechanical side, I spent a lot of my career in the defense and aerospace industry, and while we're here doing this beautiful animatronic stuff, the amount of engineering that goes into the background, especially on the mechanical design side, is quite amazing, right? It's very close to it is very close to aerospace type requirements. On the control side, we use safety rated programmable logic controllers. So we use like Allen Bradley and Beckhoff PLCs with full safety integration in our theme park animatronics, as well as these traveling animatronics as well, so that we can build in all those safety functions. I see a question up on the screen about have we joined an ASTM F24 committee? No, we don't currently have anyone on the committee. We do have the standards, and we follow them as a requirement of many of our projects, but that's one of the things that's kind of been on our list to do.
Cool. It's very impressive. I mean, just the logistics and having something tear down like that is quite intricate. So thanks for sharing about Jurassic World live. Cool.
Mm-hmm. And just kind of get us further to the Q&A part of the presentation, I'll go through the rest of this deck. This is a example. Steve had mentioned Victory Hill City Neon. The character that you see in this image here is the Hulk from the Avengers Station franchise. And we're currently working on a what we call a hypatronic head that's a fully articulated, large-scale, a 5x scale animatronic that actually has an additional layer of projection mapped media that is mapped onto the surface of the character. So as the character actually moves its head from left to right, up and down, the media will actually track and follow the physical animatronic movements of a face like this. That gives us the ability to sort of paint on an additional layer of life, you know, where you can see sweat beads and small subtle squints and wrinkles, as well as the ability to show, you know, blood coursing through the veins on the forehead of the character. And if we choose to, we could change the character's skin color from, white to green as he gets angry and goes into his Hulk mode. This is something that we're working on currently as an element that will be added as a refresh to the current Marvel Avengers Station exhibition at Treasure Island in Las Vegas, and then it'll be scaled out into 4 additional traveling exhibitions following that.
Cool.
And, you know, I've seen several questions as we've gone along about, you know, how many disciplines are involved in what we do, and, you know, who does it, what's the size of the teams that are involved. You know, when we say we have 150 people here, a good, I don't know, probably 135 of those people put their hands on every single thing that we produce in the shop. It is a true collaborative effort, you know, from the first minute that something's sketched to working through a clay sculptural process to actually molding the skins and engineering the parts, machining, assembling, finishing, painting. There's a lot that goes into an effort like this to create, you know, this level of realism and life in these types of characters.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in general, there's probably about 15 different sub-departments or disciplines that all come together, you know, to do this. And I mentioned many of them earlier, but 15 disciplines, 135 people, and growing.
You're cool. So we had a quick, oh, cool. There you go. Do you have a projection mapping team? Just out of curiosity, or anybody that's involved with that quite yet? You mentioned that earlier for the Hulk project.
Well, we have a in-house R&D team, which we call our innovation lab, and that currently consists of a team of 4 people that their job is really to explore kind of the future technology and different, you know, new methods. You know, I always like to say that no active creation is original. It's always just somebody sort of looking at what someone else did before them and finding new ways of putting things together. We really, you know, take pride in trying to look around our industry and pull things like projection mapped media into animatronics. So they're currently focused on that, working with that. We're also working with partners like Mousetrap and Christie and folks like that to, you know, to actually do the heavy lifting and the work, working with our in-house animation and Maya team here at Animax.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Ready to move forward?
Sure, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of, you know, wrapping up our message of, you know, what we're all about, Animax. We're certainly a very diverse group of people here. And, you know, we love people of all shapes and sizes and skill levels, and, you know, engineers to creative people to the quirky artists, you know, everything from the quirky artist to the introverted engineer. Everyone has a place at Animax, and that's what makes the place so special.
That's great. So before we move on, I want to give you guys a chance to breathe. I'm going to go ahead and plug our next show that we're having. Our next live stream is going to be at a different time than our normal one, but it's in about 2 weeks, and it's on Thursday, May 28th. It's at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have Paul Oosterhout. He's an executive vice president of Century Media. He's going to be talking all about crafting your elevator pitch. So what an elevator pitch is, what's the 30-second version of your story that you can tell somebody at a networking event or in a meeting succinctly. And he has a great presentation. It's a little bit of a wacky time because he's actually in China. So we really appreciate him working with us and willing to do it at a little bit of a different time. And so go ahead and mark your calendars now. We'll have more details on that, in the coming weeks, but mark your calendars. Thursday, May 28th, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. All you students out there do not want to miss this. This is going to be fantastic. So speaking of elevator pitches, to wrap up my little thing, my segment of the show, or our segment of the show, is we want to hear about your origin stories. So we have a lot of specific questions that have been coming in, and we have our own questions about what students should be doing, kind of like our usual rundown of how to help people, and a little bit of an engineer focus, since you guys are all, robotics company. You feature robotics in part of your art. So we want to hear your 2 to 3 minute story of how you got to where you are, all the ups and downs and all that, so people know you a little bit. And then we'll jump into more of our rapid fire, well, not necessarily rapid fire, but our answering questions. And folks, we are planning to go a little bit longer than our usual hour today. We knew that we were going to take around 45 minutes to kind of set the table, because this was a really cool look behind the curtain a little bit. So we're going to go a little longer than our usual an hour show, just so you know that. We're going to try to get as many questions as we can. But Steve, I'd love to throw it to you to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you've been, and where you're going to go. Well,
sure. I figured I'd be going after Chuck, so I was gonna talk about the fact that Chuck's kind of been a laser beam focused on this industry really from when he was a kid and gone forward, and he'll tell you all about that. And I was going to classify my path to get here as that of a drunken butterfly, essentially. I've to give everyone a background and part of how I ended up here. I'm an engineer, so I've got bachelor's and master's degrees in mechanical engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and I've spent the vast majority of my career up to this point first being an engineer and working on design and analysis and process development and R&D and product development and making cool stuff to solve cool problems. And then for almost the last 20 years, I've been sort of in a technical management role, I guess. And I've been through little tiny companies where I was the first person hired by the person that started the company. I spent 7 or 8 years in a university research lab doing technology application and technology demonstration projects. And then I've worked for big giant companies in the defense industry. The majority of what I've done has been kind of defense and aerospace oriented, so very structured, very controlled, very technical, and a combination of, again, sort of product development, R&D. The last 8 to 10 years have been more in manufacturing, so I got a lot of manufacturing operations experience and exposure to what I'll call operational efficiency and lean principles. And, I think I kind of ended up here at Animax sort of by fate. I was working remotely and traveling every week, and I wanted to kind of get my life back a little bit and be closer to the Nashville area. And I saw an advertisement for a position at Animax that I responded to, and I attacked from about 3 different directions to try and get in here. And, I looked at it and I was like, well, what the heck is this company and what are they doing in Nashville? Because it didn't seem like what I would expect. But, I used to always joke around with my family and say that when I got old, which I am, but when I was ready to retire, that I was going to go be an Imagineer. I was always the kid that was hanging off, or the adult even, that was hanging off the side of the ride and trying to look behind the curtain and see what was going on and understand how things work. For me, the magic is underneath and how it happens, and not necessarily in the experience and the results. So, ultimately that's kind of the path that got me here. And I think when I first came in to meet with Chuck and talk to him, it wasn't totally obvious that my background was going to be the right fit for this kind of role within the company. But I think the more we talked and the more we understood it, when you look at the sort of the immensely technical nature of what we do, but also, that combination of that creative side and that, developing new things, everything we do is a developmental prototype, that all that sort of R&D and development background I had, it's kind of all meshed together into a good position. And instead of being the introverted engineer or the quirky artist, I guess I'm quirky extroverted engineer instead. That has just kind of found myself in this position, and I'm really enjoying it. I love what we do. It's the end product. It almost brings tears to your eyes sometimes when you see it, and you see people's response to it. It's very cool.
No, absolutely. Chuck, you have a little bit of a different career path, and as a founder, CEO, and president of a company, we want to hear it.
I sure do. Telling that story in 2 to 3 minutes will be a challenge, but I'll give it a go. Picking up on some things that Steve said earlier, really what I do today is driven by the same motivation that I had when I was 11 years old, which is when I first discovered Jim Henson and the Muppets. I remember going to see the Muppet movie when I was 11 and really just having a religious experience with it. I wanted to know everything there was to know about this thing called puppetry, Muppetry, the Muppets, Jim Henson. I immediately decided that when I grew up, I was going to be a famous filmmaker like George Lucas and Jim Henson and Steven Spielberg. And I just, made that decision and, jumped in my boat and started sailing. And the sailing looked like, first I need to learn how to make Muppets and puppets. So I found every book I could find, read them cover to cover, taught myself everything I know, how to sculpt foam, how to sculpt clay, how to make, mechanical designs, how to machine parts, how to do special effects makeup. That quickly led to a fascination with scenic design and scenery. And then that ultimately led to filmmaking that I did in my kind of mid-teenage years. Ultimately, that exposed me to a lot of the different Jim Henson Muppet makers, including Kermit Love, who was one of the inner circle Muppet designers that worked very closely with Jim Henson. Kermit has the credit for designing the original Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch and those early Sesame Street characters. So Kermit took me under his wing, and I had the great fortune of being able to do an internship for Kermit Love when I was 16 years old. So I took off to New York City, spent a long summer in New York, basically being completely flat broke, but living my dream and getting to work on Sesame Street characters that were going all over the world for the different international productions of Sesame at the time. And, that kind of kept me going through high school. And then into college, I decided to go to Vanderbilt University here in Nashville, made that decision when I was 18 years old. Moved down to Nashville, set up a puppet studio here in Nashville. And then when I got towards my senior year, I decided, I think I'm going to need a job when I graduate. So I don't really want to work for anybody, but I want to pursue my passion. I don't see any companies out there that represent what I really truly want to do when I grow up. So I'll just start my own company. And you could call that stupidity or you could call that ambition. I don't know, but it's grown into quite a significant company to this day. And, I jumped right in. I remember graduating on May the 10th, 1990, which was 30 years and 5 days ago. And, 5 days later, Jim Henson died, which the anniversary of his death is actually tomorrow. 30 years ago tomorrow, he died. So that really kind of was a real lightning bolt to me at the time. And, I heard Steve mention earlier, he younger. I never thought about that. I admired Walt Disney. I certainly admired theme parks and that whole world, but never really saw that as a path for myself. But what very quickly happened, though, was I did a very quick pivot from puppetry for film and television to puppetry for theme parks and visitor experiences, and jumped right in and found out, wow, this is very, very similar, but a lot more difficult. So, and there's a lot more opportunity out there being located in Nashville to do that. And, just started doing it, hired a few employees, got very fortunate to have a phone call from Disney very early on and did one Disney project, knocked it out of the park. It led to the next one, a next one, a next one. And I was in my early 20s and I really didn't care about sleeping or eating or even really having money to survive. I cared about that passion and that drive. And it led me to, be able to build this great company. So that's a little snapshot of my history.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable story. So before I hand things off, let me just figure some things out here. Somebody asked me what I do, so I'm going to give you guys a break And before I hand things off to Dave, I'll go ahead and tell my origin story for those who haven't heard it. So hello, I'm Patrick Kling. I'm an art director with Nickelodeon Experience Design. So my story started in California. I grew up down the street from Disneyland, and I would go to the theme parks all the time with my family, loved how they brought families together. And so I started building theme parks out of Connects and Legos when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. And I'd have very elaborate recreations of Pirates of the Caribbean and roller coasters going throughout my house. And I was absolutely obsessed. I was going when I was like 13, 12 years old. I recreated like Nature's Wonderland in my room with all sorts of lights and things like that. That's from Disneyland, an old Disneyland attraction. And my parents were kind of just didn't understand what I was all about, but I would just lock myself in my room and build all these things. And when I was 14, I heard on the PA system at my local junior high that they were hiring at a water park. So I knew I wanted to do stuff with amusement parks and theme parks. And so I got a job as a frontline employee at a water park. Then went to college. It was still like in the early range where there wasn't a lot of information about what I should do, and there weren't programs that were all about it. So I actually did some art center design courses in high school. And I would build little models of theme parks and come up with storylines for all these things. And I was kind of the oddball in the bunch. And then I go to college for international business, also studying interior architecture and design for my first 2 years. And then I was also in operations at Disneyland, opening up attractions. And then when I graduated in 2009, which was a really bad time to graduate, which is kind of like why we started the show in general, because I feel like I have a lot of similar issues that people watching who are students right now of trying to reenter the economy. I volunteered with the Themed Entertainment Association, which is huge, and they were putting on their gala at Universal Studios. So I volunteered with a professional crew to put on the show, and follow it up with every single person I had interactions with, got feedback from every single person I was around. And basically what I got was, Patrick, you're amazing. We'd love to hire you, but we just laid off half of our staff. So I said, okay, that's not great. But I had some money saved up, and I decided to travel around the world a little bit. Went to Europe, went on an epic road trip across America, and went to every regional park, Six Flags, Cedar Point Park, Cedar Fair Park, and then kind of started a little bit of a company, and that didn't work out. So then I figured I wasn't as successful as Chuck was starting a company. I'll tell you that. And so then I decided to go move to Orlando to get back into theme park design. And so I did that, and within a couple months, I was working at Give Kids the World, and I was going to networking events with the TEA and Slice Creative Network, which has a speed networking event, which is very similar to the Next Gen Give Gab for TEA. So I highly recommend when that starts coming back up, you guys get engaged with Next Gen for TEA. And then I started as a coordinator with Nickelodeon, and then I was there for a couple of years doing that, opened several projects, was doing a little bit of creative writing for them as a coordinator. Then I was kind of harpooned by Brian Morrow, who's been on the show a few weeks ago, to work with him at SeaWorld as a creative lead on projects. Then I worked with iTech Entertainment, and then I came back to Nickelodeon as an associate art director, which I am right now, working as a creative lead on all sorts of projects. And I opened the Nickelodeon Universe Project and American Dream. I was the field art director for that in New Jersey. So that's my origin story about how I got into the industry, which was just TEA, networking, and being a lot of hustle and a lot of long-term perseverance. So that's my little story. I'm going to go ahead and throw it to, hold on, I got to figure out this mechanism here. Throw it to Dave. Thanks, guys. I'll see you a little bit later. That was incredible. I'm speaking for everybody that just watched. That was fantastic. But Dave, take it away.
Hey, guys. Oh, thanks for giving that great presentation. It was really a good example of what you guys are doing and some of the amazing things you guys are up to. I'm really happy to have you guys on and get some of that engineering and vendor perspective from our industry. We have a lot of engineering students who are watching right now and who have reached out to me with questions. And actually, one of the first questions I wanted to ask ties in a little bit to one that Chris Gustafson just posted on one of our things. What are some of the things that you guys are doing now during this global pandemic to kind of ensure the safety of your team and the safety of your company? And then what are your 3-month and 6-month outlook moving forward? just from what you guys are seeing in the industry and with your business personally?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting as this whole COVID-19 situation started. We actually had 2 crews of people over in China back in the beginning of January working on some installs. So we kind of started hearing some sputterings of things going on early on. As things started becoming a little bit more real, sort of towards the end of February and early March, we very quickly got together, a couple of my managers, and through various discussions, and really started some planning, because it was pretty obvious that things were going to go off the rails and that there was likely going to be shutdowns and things. So we did 2 major things. First of all, we took significant action very early on to get as much of our staff as possible set up to work from home as we could. And, normally the office folks that are working on computers and doing that type of work, that's relatively straightforward. Presented some challenges just because not everybody had laptops, and we had bandwidth challenges. But we really kind of put things in gear, and over a period of about a week and a half or 2 weeks, got everybody spooled up and set up. Certainly everybody that was computer-based to work from home. And then the other thing we did is that some of our department managers got extremely creative and basically took very significant portions of their staff and kind of packed them up with work. And, we literally have photographs and things like that. We've seen some stuff on our Instagram of, people with giant piles of crap loaded up in their cars that they took home to work in their home offices or their living rooms or whatever. We have people in our costume shop that took significant amounts of work home, and they're working on their home machines there. We have people in our sculpt shop and people that are working on finishing and painting that have taken work home. And it's really been effective. We got ourselves set up, using tools so we could communicate effectively, to do virtual meetings, both internally and externally. And, basically we got all that set up just in time for Nashville to kind of shut down, and very quickly for the state of Tennessee to shut down. And I'm really, really proud of our team, because I will say we're about 6 or 7 weeks into our shutdown here. And internally, with respect to our business, we've seen almost no impact. We've been able to keep people moving very, very effectively, working from home, communicating well, with really very little impact on our productivity. We ended up being very fortunate, is that we have a lot of projects that are in the early stages of design and R&D and development. So we were able to do that. We don't have a lot of final integration and assembly coming together. So that was one big thing we did. I think the second step that we took is very quickly we started hearing about and seeing the shortages of PPE and other equipment that was becoming very visible and very loud. And we started looking around the shop, and it's like, hey, you know what? We have a lot of really good people, and we have a lot of really good capability and a lot of really good talent. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's reinvent ourselves and see if we can contribute. So we actually got, a portion of our staff started working on making, cloth masks, for PPE, and we've made thousands of those over the last several weeks. We started making, initially using our 3D printer and our routers to cut clear plastic and 3D print the head frames for face shields. So we got a portion of our staff doing that work, and that's had 2 effects. First of all, it's helped us keep certain people busy that might have otherwise had trouble staying busy. And the second thing is we developed some relationships with some of our local hospitals and other organizations so that we could, get an essential business designation for the state of Tennessee, so that we could have some of our people come in and continue working on those PPE items and things during the shutdown. So several other companies in our industry have done that. I think, you've seen it all over the place. It's been really good that we've done that for the limited number of people that we've had in the shop. We've just basically been following the appropriate guidelines. When you go from 150 people in the building down to about 20 in an 88,000 square foot building, it's pretty easy to keep people separated. People are wearing masks when they're in close proximity with others. We've implemented, cleaning procedures and all those things to try and keep everybody safe. And so far that's been working out really well for us, at least considering the reality of the situation. Now, aside from that, we have had some clients that have shut down or put things on hold. So we have seen a little bit of a slowdown in our business that has had some impact on us that we've had to adapt to. But, we're optimistic that as a company that Animax is going to come through this strong and that we're going to be poised very well to spool back up very quickly. On the 3 to 6 month outlook, that's I wish I had a magical crystal ball that would tell me that. We've already seen some signs of some things starting to get a little bit back to normal, both with the reduction in some of the restrictions, but we've also seen kind of some stirring of some of our clients that, I think especially with what's going on with Shanghai Disney reopening and the quick sellout of that, and the fact that people seem to be anxious to go back out and do things. Those things are very good signs. The one Jurassic World exhibition in Korea has reopened. The one in Chengdu is supposed to open beginning of July. So we're starting to see signs that things may be on some kind of road to recovery. I would hope in 3 months that we're closer to normal than we are today, but still cautiously proceeding forward. And I think it's very reasonable to think that in 6 months that many of our clients and ourselves will be kind of back on track and where we were before this all happened, and looking up instead of looking down or looking at the bumper of the car in front of us.
Yeah. And Patrick kind of mentioned in his spiel that he graduated in the Great Recession. I was wondering if you guys had any comparisons of your own to make between that time and the time we're going through now.
Yeah, Chuck will give you an interesting perspective on that from his side.
Yeah.
I was kind of in a university environment when that happened, so I didn't really see the impact directly personally on myself, but I used to work with a lot of defense and aerospace clients when I was in that world, and we saw a very significant slowdown in those activities, particularly investments in things like R&D and unnecessary expenses. So that's always the case. I got out of college in 1990, so it kind of dates myself a little bit. But there was a bit of a recession back then, and I used it as an opportunity to go to grad school rather than going out and getting my cushy job. I decided to stay in school and focus on that and do something that ultimately has paid off very beneficially for my career long term. But look, I like to think that I'm optimistic that the economy was going pretty well before this all happened, and I'm kind of hopeful that things will recover and get back to normal quickly. And I think even with the entertainment industry, even when things are tough, people want to be entertained. Now, it may change the complexion of it. It may change the availability of people having the money to do certain things, but people still look for entertainment. So I think while our industry has been impacted significantly in the last several months by this, I think we'll have a quick recovery. So I'm hopeful for that. Chuck, I know you got interesting insight on that.
Well, yeah, I think, when you have a business like Animax that's been around for 30 years, we've survived all of the statistics that say X number of businesses will go out of business over X number of years and whatnot, especially one as unusual as Animax is. So obviously have been through and faced very similar, and I would say even more difficult times than I would consider COVID-19 is right now. I think, the key, and every time you go through one of those bad spells, when you survive, and I'll emphasize the word when, because you do survive those things, you come out of it better, and you come out of it with your scars, but hopefully if you can remain optimistic and look towards the future, you know that things will always get better. And I think that power of positive thinking, that knowing that you will move forward and you will be better and do better, it is exactly what you need for that to be fulfilled in your own world. And I certainly have applied that to this business. So I would say that the recession from 10 years ago, I know that there's a lot of comparisons with that and COVID-19 now, but I don't really look at that as a specific benchmark to compare against. I think that we'll come out of this fine, like we always have. The biggest difference nowadays is that we have 150 employees of the company, and when you realize those employees have their significant others, spouses, families, kids, that's a lot of people that we have direct responsibility for. So when I was a company of 25 people, I could be a little bit more derelict and risky in decisions I would make, because eventually it would really just affect me and a small group of people. But nowadays it's the stakes are much higher. So the decisions that we make, that are very difficult ones, are focused on those employees and allowing the company to put itself in the best position it can be put in to survive this. So where we don't like the whole idea of shutting down our internship program for the summer, or making some small layoffs, which we've had to do, those are things that we have to do for the greater good, for the betterment of the core employees that we have, and looking forward to our survival. So I think the 3 to 6 month outlook, in my opinion, is extremely bright, and we'll be on top, and we'll be ready to restore all the things that we had to set aside for now, and be better for it. So
yeah, I'm glad to hear it's everyone I've talked to basically so far has had that same answer, that everyone's very optimistic that when this is over, everything is going to come back, and everybody's very optimistic that things are going to be looking up. And so I kind of feel like I know the answer to this one, but one of the questions we got before the webinar today from Griffin is, are you anticipating any changes to attraction design given the current circumstances? If so, will figures/show action equipment still play a role?
Well, I think, will there be changes? Yes. Will there be, will that affect what we do? If you let it affect what we do, yes. But we're not signed up on that program. We're signed up on the success program that says, what we do. I mean, we're creating robotic versions of great, well-known characters. So that presents no risk in terms of, you can't catch a virus from, Donkey from Shrek. You know what I mean? I would think that there would be more call for what we do. If we could fill theme parks with robots, that would solve all our problems, right? And put a lot fewer risks in the way of guests that are coming in to enjoy what we do. I think there certainly will be changes, and there already are changes that are being discussed within our industry for ride and show design. Obviously, social distancing and can you get on a roller coaster very closely placed next to one or 3 or 4 more people? That's difficult, and bigger owner operators as well as the mom and pops are really struggling with how to rise to that and solve that problem. And they will. I mean, human beings are very resilient, and I think you'll find very quickly all those problems are going to be solved, and we'll come out the other side much better. But we're not going to stay away from theme parks, and we're not going to ride rides, and we're not going to seek we're not going to not seek adrenaline rushes.
Sure.
So for those of you that have chosen to make careers in themed entertainment, in whatever discipline you're in, you will have a very bright future. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we had a quick question here from Tom. What is the process for animation? Is that left up to the animator and engineer, collaboration of both, or software that works with the likes of Maya to create the movement? So it's more of a specific process question for you guys.
Steve?
Okay, I'll go. Yeah, I mean, I'll say it again, is, to some extent, it's all the above, right? I mean, it's always a collaborative process. It has to be. If you left it up just to the creatives, you'd find that you run into the challenges with the laws of physics. Like, a lot of times we're trying to duplicate characters that exist on video game screens or in movies or things like that. And they don't necessarily have to adhere to the laws of physics. It's the same thing when you're working with figure finish even. It's like, hey, in the reality, you know, we're wrinkly beings, right? And video game characters don't always wrinkle and those types of things. So it's all a process that, you know, it starts out on the creative end of trying to understand what the client's intent and the client's end goals are. We typically started out at the very beginning of a project with a process, and I'm not going to go into all the details of the process because I think some of that's our uniqueness, but we really work to kind of define, based on the creative intent of a character, you know, what is the number of animations that are required, and what are those animations, and what is the range of motion and the acceleration and the velocity range of what will be required to achieve that. And we go through that as an iterative process between internal creatives, external creatives, as well as our engineering and controls teams to balance the desire kind of with the art of the possible. Then we'll typically go into a tool like Maya or something like that. We typically use Maya, where we'll start rigging up a character and developing animatics. And then we go back and forth with those animatics to work with, you know, the engineering team and design team again on what is possible, and the client's creatives on what do they want the character to look like and what type of motion do they want. At some point, you know, usually too late from the standpoint of engineering, you try and lock that down, right? And then you use the basis of locking it down to really go into your heavy mechanical design and engineering and your controls design and engineering. You know, the size and scale and scope and range of motion and speed of the animations really dictates what kind of actuators do you need, how beefy does your structure need to be, how much power do you require, right? This is for people that are used to, you know, we do almost everything with electrical actuators, right? And people that are used to hydraulics aren't used to the fact that when you go into something and use, you know, some of the larger actuators we have in that Jurassic World T-Rex, they are the largest electrical linear actuators that you can buy. They are largest and most powerful. And, you know, so they require a big fire hose of electrical, you know, wire to get the power to them to run, and they require immense amounts of power. So it's that iterative process that goes back and forth between the creatives and the technical side to balance out what can be done and how do we create the experience, but within the bounds of what can be done with, you know, cost and budget and schedule and laws of physics.
Okay, awesome. I think we had a quick question from Dan that you guys can answer that was on the screen briefly. Do you guys have structural engineers?
If you're talking a structural engineer from the standpoint of somebody that did like the civil / structural side of things, we don't currently have any of those on the team. It's, you know, I think we're certainly more biased to mechanical designers and engineers here on the team. We do occasionally collaborate externally with structural engineers. Certain states have different requirements for that. And we do have elements of what we do, especially for theme parks, where we're looking at the facility interface side of what we do. As I will say that as attractions and the animatronics we build continue to get larger, and they do, almost to a stupid level at this point, stuff is getting ridiculously large. Then aspects of structural engineering are starting to become very critical with building interfaces, foundation interfaces, especially for things that are temporary. So, you know, look, what I would say is this, and I can say this pretty firmly being an engineer, you know, if you've gone to school for a certain type of engineering, whether that's directly adaptable to, you know, the type of thing you've decided you want to do now or not, I wouldn't get too hung up on it. You know, if you get through school with an engineering degree, you've shown that you've got a certain amount of smarts and a certain amount of ability to understand science and mathematics and rules and assumptions and all those things. Don't worry about pigeonholing yourself. You know, I've been in a ton of different industries throughout my career, and what I did in the past, you know, never really constrained me. It's again, kind of Chuck's answer. of will you let the world control you based on what it wants to be, or will you control it? And I'll just come back and say, you control it, right? So find your path, make your path.
Awesome. And then one last question for me before I throw it to Kelly. You guys mentioned that you aren't doing your internship program this summer, and you had to make a few layoffs, as well as the rest of the country's done the same thing. When do you guys see that coming back? When do you see hiring happening again, or when do you see you guys resuming your internship program?
Well, I would imagine that by excuse me, later this fall and certainly by next summer, we'll have our internship program in full high gear again.
Okay.
And I think we have to take that with a little bit of grain of salt, because, you know, if we find a really amazing single person that we want to offer them an opportunity and they're going to miss a window, we're going to certainly, you know, try to bend over backwards and accommodate that. You know, regarding when we turn the switch back on for hiring, that could be tomorrow, that could be a week from now, it could be 3 months from now, it could be 6 months from now. We're trying to take a very conservative position right now and control our expenses as best as we can. And unfortunately, hiring, which, you know, back in January, I think from January to the end of February, we added 27 people to our staff in the form of new hires. So all we're doing is kind of like turning the dial down a little bit so we can, you know, push through this, and we fully intend to turn that dial back up once we pass through this. I would not discourage anybody watching today, or anybody in general, to see a posting on our website, or for that matter, any of our competitors' websites that says currently not hiring. If that were me in your position, I would spend the time and get my resume together and better myself, and still apply and still send in information and still get my face out there to be known, because those are the people that will have opportunities as soon as the clouds clear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I think I'm going to throw it to Kelly now to talk more about what you guys, what people should be doing now. Welcome, Kelly.
Thanks,
Hey. No, it's so good to see you guys. Okay, so there are lots of like great questions happening in the comments. I'm going to start off. I think this one with Dominic. He asked. Sorry, my husband is also working, so we have dueling conference calls. What would you recommend for young professionals trying to get involved within the industry at companies such as Animax, Life Formation, Sally, stuff like that?
Yeah, so I'll start out with this one, and then Chuck will probably take it a little bit. You know, it's been very interesting for me coming into this industry, because the path, you know, I recognize, I'm looking at the live comments going through on the right side of my screen, and you know, I see a lot of names that I recognize of people that I've run into at TEA events or conferences, or I've seen them active on LinkedIn and other places, you know, following myself and following Animax and other things that are going on. You know, I'll put in a little plug, and I'm very new to this. I'll put in a little plug for TEA. Is, you know, some of the mixers and things like that. We've gotten to meet fantastic people there, and some of them are working here now, or have had internships with us. I think just getting tuned into the industry and attending things like this, and interfacing and interacting and networking with similar students, with professionals, you know, that are working in the industry, just get your name out there, get some visibility, talk to people, you know, get some guidance. All those things are huge. You know, they a lot of times they say it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? And the networking aspect really can't be overblown. I think it's huge, especially in this industry, as we do that. So I would say certainly do those types of things. Keep yourself open and interactive and everything else. The other thing I would say is, this is also an industry that's been interesting to me. Is, you know, I've got two daughters that are artists. And with an artist, you know, everything is based on a portfolio, right? It's like, show me what you can do. Show me your work. You can put words on a resume, but that doesn't mean anything, right? And typically in my career so far, when it comes to engineers, that's, you know, in technical side of the business, that's really not the case, right? It's who have you worked for? What have you done? But you know, the thought of having like a portfolio of things for technical folks and engineers for me was kind of foreign when I came to Animax, really, because it's not how we did things. We talk about it, but you wouldn't show it. And, you know, as I get here at Animax, I find that anytime I'm interfacing with somebody or talking, or somebody comes in for an interview, I'm like, show me what you've done, right? I want to see your portfolio. I want to see all the cool stuff you worked on in your projects that are personal projects or your school projects or those types of things. You know, I'll go back to when I was working on my master's degree. I was working at the University of Delaware, and I was working in the Composite Center on my research. And you know, I used to spend my spare time in the evenings and on weekends in the computer room and in the machine shop and in the composite shop, designing and making parts for my motorcycle, right? Because it was fun and it was cool, right? And I enjoyed doing it. And I learned all kinds of skills doing that, right? I went, I made parts, and I messed things up. I broke stuff, you know, I damaged things. But I made cool stuff. I learned how to machine. I learned how to weld. I learned how to make composite parts. I did all those things. And I got my first job because there was somebody that was working with us that saw me running around the building over a period of a couple of weeks. And then they ended up seeing the end result. I had a 4-pound carbon fiber luggage rack on the back of my Ducati that I could put, you know, 300 pounds of weight on and go traveling with my wife. And they were like, wow, that guy can do something, right? And that got me my first job. Right. So what we're talking about here is no different than that, right? It's showing what you can do, developing the skills, networking, and just, you know, you have to be your own biggest fan to some extent. That elevator pitch thing is true too. It's just kind of get yourself out there, try things, don't be afraid to fail, show people what you're capable of. Somebody's going to notice it, right? And it's going to be that coupled with, you know, again, I sense it in the reactions, and what I see on the comments is passion. Like, you know, I didn't have the same passion for entertainment and stuff maybe as Chuck did coming in, but I'm certainly passionate for it now. I just didn't know I could make a career out of it, you know, at the time. So, you know, take that and use it as fuel, I guess is what I will say. And that's how you're going to get there.
Yeah, I love that message, Steve. And I, I would echo and say the person who asked the question, Dominic, who doesn't remember Dominic at IAPA this year in the TEA booth with the robot on his shoulder that he was proudly demonstrating to everyone who would care to, you know, listen to his story. You know, I think don't underestimate the power of social media and the power of being pushy in the right way. Don't be afraid to approach people that are working in our industry or even your heroes. You know, go approach them. What's the harm? What's the risk? Are you going to fail? So what? You know, that's how those of us that get to have the privilege of doing this for a living have gotten here, because we've been brave and we've decided to go for it. You know, another kind of thing I would emphasize is that besides taking times like this and just working on your portfolio, which are, you know, very important things to do. Again, I'll brag on Dominic. The other day you posted a new mechanism you designed, iBlink mechanism with a Rube Goldberg device behind that. That shows passion. That demonstrates, I'm sure you were doing that, you know, at home at your computer, probably at midnight, or maybe pulled an all-nighter to do that because you had passion driving you to do so. Take that same passion and, you know, work on your elevator pitch, and don't forget that, you know, learning skills like looking people in the eye and saying you're going to do something and doing it, and kind of building that on your own personal brand as you get out there, as you go to TEA events. Don't think twice about walking up to one of us and approaching us and asking questions. You know, how did you get into your career? Or who do you know that's at this party that is working in the following area? Who can you point me at? We'll be more than happy to help you, point you in the right direction, and give you that mentoring support that you need. So please do that. And, you know, life is short. Go for it.
Oh, you're so amazing. That, like, one of the questions that we ask, like, everybody that comes on, Samuel, one of the questions that we ask is like, what are some things that students or recent grads, basically anyone right now, should be doing during this time? And you just gave us the perfect answer without me even having to go into it. So I appreciate
Well, I'll tell
that.
you, I remember, I think it was my somewhere between my junior and senior year in college, thinking to myself, really starting to really truly think about what do I want to do when I graduate, and going through a really hard time with that, kind of thinking, gee, can you really make a living being a puppeteer? Like, is that like lightning striking, or am I just stupid? Or, going through the motions of that. And I remember, leaning on certain people that you would consider your mentors. And I remember certain mentors at that time said, go find the traditional books. Like, there's a great book called How to Win Friends and Influence People. Another one called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People that Dale Carnegie wrote. Think and Grow Rich is another great one. Go get those books and take the time and read them and understand that those principles that existed 100 years ago still apply today. And trust it. Take chances, learn how to present yourself, how to develop confidence, and it will take you so far in life. I like to say that, these are habits that you have to put in practice, and you have to make those little mistakes, because if you don't do them, they won't become natural for you, and you won't be able to go to a TEA party and walk up and interrupt somebody in the right way and be professional about it. Do it and practice it over and over again. And don't be worried about being embarrassed, because we were all there and we all look at you as, man, we love it that you're trying. You're not a wallflower. You're not sitting in the corner of the room afraid to come up and ask those questions and approach. So
we had another question. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve.
I was just going to chime in real briefly and just say that, again, sometimes fear paralyzes people and sometimes fear motivates people. And, mistakes are how we learn, right? Hopefully we don't make them so big that they cause massive destruction or anything like that. But ultimately, don't be afraid to make a mistake. If you fear trying something, or if you fear engaging someone, coming up to talk to myself or Chuck or somebody else at an event or whatever, if you let fear keep you from doing it, you've already failed, right? So don't let that happen. Take the shot, go for it. And if it doesn't work out well, you haven't lost anything. You've probably learned something, and you're no worse off than you were if you hadn't tried it in the first place. So it may sound cliche or whatever, but I think it's something that we have in common. It's one of the reasons that we as a leadership team here at Animax work well together, is because none of us accept the status quo. None of us accept what we're dealt. None of us accept failure. We will make it work. We will always make it work, and we'll figure out a way. And it's a mindset that I think is important. It's a former coworker of mine used to say it regularly, used to call it the will to win, right? And that is really everything, especially when you're young and you're getting started. Just go for it, and don't let anything stop you or tell you otherwise.
That's so great. So one of our viewers, Damon Tomasi, he asked, when hiring, would you rather see a student take an unrelated job quickly, or do you dislike seeing gaps on resumes?
It depends on if you're talking about right now in 2020.
Yeah.
If you're worried about, hey, I was signed up for this great internship and they shut the program down, and now what do I do? How do I pivot? Believe me, trust me, nobody is going to look at anything on your resume from 2020 and hold it against you. Yeah. I think, these are the times that, if you've tried everything you can possibly try and you can't get, professional exposure, do what Patrick said earlier. Go, get a few bucks, talk to your parents, travel the world, go to, I know that's easier said than done, but go to the Louvre and go to museums and go to the famous, points of architecture around the world and see them, touch them and feel them with your own hands and see them with your own eyes. And that adds to your portfolio of experience. We call that personal benchmarking. Go do that, and that will give you the fuel that you need when things do return to normal, and when you can sit down and have a interview on your next opportunity. People will say, what did you do with that time? And when you give an answer like that, that will go a million miles for you. Trust me on that.
Yeah, let me chime in with something real quick on that too. And that's, we've talked about it a little bit, and I'll give an example is, you know, we don't have our internship program active right now. And the main primary reason for that, as things are reopening, it's not necessarily due to not being able to have people here in the building. It's because we're very closely monitoring our costs and our expenses and our cash flow. And our priority there is our full-time employees and their families, right? But nothing's saying, you know, typically in this industry, we have paid internships. Well, what about unpaid internships? If you have a company that you're really anxious to go work with and work for and learn from, call them up and find out if you can just come in and hang out, you know, sign an NDA and go help them work on stuff and learn and absorb. Maybe you don't get paid, so maybe you got to go work at the grocery store or the auto parts store or, you know, DoorDash or whatever it is, to make a little bit of money while you're there. But don't be afraid to ask, right? You've got nothing to lose. And I would say, you know, again, with respect to the original answer to the question, I don't think a gap in a resume is super important unless it's really, really long for some reason and there's not a decent explanation for it. You know, something I will say, you know, I spent a couple of internships when I was in college working in an industry that I wasn't real thrilled with. And I could have easily gotten a job in that industry coming out of college, and I wanted to have nothing to do with it. So I didn't take the easy road. Don't do it because it's convenient if it's not where you want to be. You know, you spend a huge amount of your time at work, huge amount of your life at work. Make sure you pursue your passion and go do what you enjoy, because it's still work, but it makes it a lot more tolerable. So don't settle. Right.
That Thomas Paine quote, "These are the times that try men's souls," is really kind of coming out right now. I think, you know, for a lot of people, the ability to travel right now is like a dream almost, because, you know, everybody's going to be rushing to get out and go and do. This is more of like a fun question. What's the first thing you're going to go and see when the quarantine is over? With, you know.
Wow.
I thought about that one.
That's a tough one. I typically travel so much and see so much. I already do that. So I'm trying to think of what's on the bucket list next. I really want to get to Osaka, Japan, and see the massive effort that has gone on there related to one of our recent projects. And we've had lots of people traveling from Animax over there, working very hard, installing really cool things. And I can't wait to get back over there to see all that with my own eyes. I think also I had a trip to New Zealand planned for a month ago that got completely dropped and vanished. And I look forward to getting back to a country that I love so much, which is that place. If any of you ever have the opportunity to go to New Zealand, it is mind-blowing.
It's so great.
That's sort of my bucket list at the moment.
It's such a great place. Steve?
Yeah, I don't get to go anywhere. I got to stay back here and run the company that travels the world. So that'll be my answer.
Sorry, I'm sorry to drop that on you. It's just something that I've been thinking a lot about. Like, oh my gosh, because I'm used to traveling and going and doing. So,
honestly, the best answer I can give to that is I look forward to when I can go anywhere and gather together a group of people I love, which is typically TEA people, and have hugs and have a drink and enjoy, you know, firsthand company. That's really what, and I don't care where that is.
Like camaraderie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, this came in twice, so I do want to try to get this answered because it's a little bit of an interesting one. Do you think AI has a future in the theme park industry with animatronics? If you're allowed to talk about it.
100%. We had a internal meeting yesterday, actually, talking about, you know, it's another technology that if we take that and we don't fully rely on it, but we sort of meld it into other things that we're doing, it can be very powerful. You know, I don't know if you have a perspective on that, Steve, you want to share?
No, I mean, I agree with that. I think, you know, there's a lot of technology out there now, right? And we're constantly looking at how does that technology integrate with what we do. There's always that human and that performance element that I think is unique to a lot of what we do. That, that may or may not fit in with AI and other types of technologies, but I think it's out there. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll go back to the fact that we're a fancy robotics company, right? At some level. And so I certainly think that AI and other factors like that will be part of what we do in the future. I can't necessarily predict how yet. That's stuff we're still figuring out.
So while we wrap up, I'd love to close on this story. So I know there's a lot of people out there that are feeling a little down in the dumps. I know I was back in 2009. I was like, wow, I've done everything I did right. What am I doing? Chuck, you have a pretty inspiring story. I'd love for you to take a moment and share that.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that one. In my path to become Jim Henson when I was a youngster, one of my very first trips I made to New York City was around the time when I was maybe around 15 years old. And I got an opportunity to actually go to the Henson workshop and bring some of my puppets there to interview. And I figured, well, if I just show up with my puppets, they're going to see how great I am and they're going to immediately hire me, not realizing that you don't just hire 15-year-old kids that, are in high school in St. Louis, Missouri. So I decided to make this Kermit the Frog puppet that was an exact replica of the Kermit the Frog. And I brought it with me on this interview. And here's a picture of it. You can actually see on the screen here. The case that you see here was a gift that my staff gave to me that they surprised me with on our 30-year anniversary. Mm-hmm. So this is a puppet that I made in like 1984. Kermit with his banjo there. And what you can't see closely is the letter that is framed below it that was my rejection letter from Henson Associates, where they basically said, you can't copy the Muppets, stop doing this, you will never amount to anything as far as we're concerned. And I think this is a wonderfully inspiring message of rejection that I could put out there at a time like this. As I told Patrick, this may have been very disappointing to that 15-year-old kid at the time, but it did allow me to pivot and follow a passion and build a career where I don't really look at what I do as work. I get up every morning and I go do what I feel I was born to do, and I'm very lucky for that. So don't be afraid to be bold and to have people tell you flat out no, or even threaten you with legal action if you go too far with your passion.
That's well, and that's a really great. I mean, that's a really great Kermit.
It's so good.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. So, big thank you. Big thank you to Steve and Chuck for joining us on the show. Go ahead and stay on afterward because we're still going to keep it going after we cut the feed. But everyone, a big round of applause virtually for these guys. That was a fantastic. I know you guys are probably tired after talking so much. We really appreciate it. We do have a couple little announcements that we'd like to share with you folks, which is next week. 2 weeks from now, right? We're going to have how to craft your elevator pitch with Paul Oosterhout, Executive Vice President of Central Media. I know Paul's been at Universal for many, or he was at Universal for many years and is an industry veteran, all that kind of good stuff. He's going to talk all about the elevator pitch, which we kind of alluded to several times. Set your clock, set your calendars, your outlooks, whatever that may be. Thursday, May 28th at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then, folks, just a couple of wrap-up thoughts. We've talked about a few things about how to get engaged with people. I just want to go ahead and send off my LinkedIn account. If anybody wants to go ahead and just LinkedIn with me, send me a message. I try to get as many as I can. I'm a little bit behind right now, but go ahead and drop me a message if you like. I'm sure that Kelly and Dave would say the same exact thing for themselves. And you can find the TEA and IAPA and other organizations out there to get involved with on LinkedIn as well. I forgot to talk about that. So there's a really good calendar out there that Blue Loop has put together that I'll put in the comments on this. I forgot to mention it, and we've already ran way too long, so I'm not going to go into it. But we appreciate you guys all coming out. We're going to sign off. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. Kelly and Dave, any parting thoughts before I shut down the feed?
Well, I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I just appreciated them coming on. This was such a great talk. Oh my gosh.
I think we could have gone for another 3 hours if we get through all the questions. So,
all right,
that's awesome.
Well, thanks everybody. Thank you for joining us, guys. Share, find us on Facebook. We have a little account that we broadcast out of. LinkedIn, follow, all that kind of good stuff. We're doing this every 2 weeks for the time being while during this quarantine situation. We'll be doing it for a while. There's all sorts of people are approaching us that want to be on the show. So the more people that come and watch the show, and the more you share it, the more people we can have. Like, this was a fantastic presentation done today, and we want to have more just like this. So thanks everybody. Bye.
Bye.